Good evening, and welcome to the large and unnecessary First Player Token podcast. 2016 has officially begun.
It begins only when we start speaking.
It does, yes.
So it's now the middle of January, but 2016's only just started.
It's the crap days. We're on hump week. I think it's known as.
Well, hello people. This is episode 11.
Yes.
Of our illustrious podcast. We've had a bit of an extended break, a wee bit longer than we thought. I'm mainly going to blame that on the fact that we got the cold, the both of us.
We were both pretty choked up.
We're still trying to get rid of it, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's just horrendous coughing.
Spluttering during this episode.
Might be a lot of it. So I hope that doesn't bother you too much.
A lot of fairly disgusting throat clearing and everything like
that. Yep. Right. Well, this is a podcast about gaming in general.
Yes. All sorts of gaming.
We mainly focus on board and video gaming. We do have our contributor, Pawel, who likes to talk about RPGs in a really confusing manner. And you'll be hearing a lot more of him over the next few weeks.
Hopefully.
Because of certain things that are going to happen. Mainly that Euan's going to bugger off to South America for a while.
Just getting out of Dodge, basically, as you have to do.
But we'll deal with that when it happens.
Yes.
Or I'll deal with it when it happens, I think. I'm going to have to deal with Pawel.
Chris's cross to bear.
Right, well, you had a good Christmas, Euan.
It was pleasant enough. It was nice to have a couple of weeks off and just generally laze about, feeling ill from too much drinking.
Excellent.
I think I actually skipped the hangover stage and just got full-on sick, basically. It was quite good.
Straight to full-blown illness.
Yeah. But it gave us a bit of time to catch up on some gaming, because we were flagging a bit towards the end of last year, to be fair.
We were. I mean, the run-up to Christmas was a bit crazy for us.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and we didn't get as much done as we'd liked, and there was maybe a few slightly lightweight episodes.
Nah, a couple. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel, but we've made up for it. Really have.
Well, we've done plenty.
Aye, plenty of gaming over the festive period.
And there's more to come, so hopefully it should be an eventful.
Yeah, I've actually played more games than I've got the time to talk about in this episode, so it should be fun. So I've picked a couple.
Right, you've actually managed to narrow it down. I thought you were just going to do a rundown.
Well, I was thinking about having a speed session where I just basically have 2 minutes in each game, but I thought nah. Because then I just run out of things to talk about for the next episode, so we don't want
get
that.
enough cocaine either. So
well, that's true. I completely out of cocaine after New Year.
It's a shocker, that.
Right.
Who'd have thunk it?
Shall we get started then, Euan?
Yes, let's just get right into it.
Right, let's talk about some board games then.
Yeah.
We've actually got quite a few board games under our belt.
We have. I've forgotten what we've played. That's been the problem. And we played so many of them because there's been such a gap. We played quite a few of them later on in December. Sorry. Yeah. So we may have to reappraise a few, but we're going to go in. We've picked out a couple.
Yep.
And the first of which we want to talk about is King of New York.
Yes. Let's start with something a bit light.
Yeah.
Ease ourselves back into this.
Aye. And we've actually had opportunity to play this a couple of times now and sort of get to grips with it.
Aye.
And well, what to say about King of New York then?
Well, let's start with the basics. So it's a board game. Obviously, it's designed by Richard Garfield, produced by Yellow Games. I think it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Yellow. It's IELLO.
EILO.
That's the one. Now this is a board game where you're basically rampaging monsters in New York, and it's a sort of sequel, maybe a successor to another game called King of Tokyo,
right?
Which is the same idea, but I think there are slightly different rules. Aye.
Giant monsters thing.
Yeah,
it's all about smashing things up, basically.
It is.
And
it makes me think of Rampage.
Yeah,
the amazing video game that I played on my ZX Spectrum when I was a kid.
And the relatively fun board game.
Yeah, well,
the counterpart.
We've got that there. It's not called Rampage anymore, though. The board game. Yeah, they weren't allowed to call it Rampage anymore. Right. So it's now called Terror in Meeple City, which is a god-awful name. Fuck that.
Well, we'll be back to talk about that little issue at a later time. So, King of New York, anyway. So there's various monsters that you can play as.
Yes.
I found them all quite amusing. You've got the Captain Fish that I went both times.
Who actually looks like a turtle.
Yeah. I kind of, looking a bit more into the design, it seems like it's like... Is a fish in a sort of bowl...
A goldfish bowl
It's like the head of a body that is basically just a big diving... Like an old style diving suit.
He's wearing a captain's hat and he's got a sort of Popeye pipe in his mouth as well, underneath his goldfish bowl.
Yeah, and he's got like a cruise liner attached to a chain as a sort of weapon.
Well, obviously,
yeah,
as you would. Mm-hmm. Some of the other guys, you've got your Kong, who's just your big gorilla.
Yeah.
You've got a sort of dinosaur who looks dressed like a cowboy for some reason.
I think he's called the Sheriff.
I think he is called Sheriff. Yeah. You've got Mantis, who's just this big green insect, who's my favourite.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of other ones. There's a robot and
there's a crazily overpowered looking dragon thing that seems to have some kind of massive pulse cannon. Doesn't really have any bearing on the game, but it certainly looks intimidating.
That's for the anime nerds. That one.
Oh right, yeah.
We've got a friend who would totally grab that as his yeah, that's mine.
Take a guess.
That was an impression of that guy. I'm having that one. That's for me. Right.
So yeah, you pick one of these colourful characters.
It makes no difference which one you go.
I think all the stats are all the same. You start with like 10 hit points and
0 victory points.
0 victory points, and you win when you get to 20 victory points, or if all of the other players have been knocked out of the game, and there's a couple of ways that can kind of happen.
Well, mainly just by battering each other.
Yeah, losing all their hit points, basically.
Yeah. So the game's played on a map, a very basic map in New York, and it's split into like 5 boroughs. So you've got like, what is it, the Bronx?
Brooklyn, the Bronx.
Brooklyn and...
Staten Island and Queens, I think.
Queens, and then you've got Manhattan.
Yeah.
Which is the middle part of the board. It is Manhattan, isn't it? Yeah.
It is Manhattan's the sort of the main.
And Manhattan's split into 3 sections, so you've got lower and midtown and then upper. And the idea is that you start off in one of these boroughs and there's a bunch of buildings in each of the boroughs and you've got a bunch of dice. So when it's your turn, you roll these dice and there's 6 different symbols and each of these symbols lets you do something. So some of them might let you destroy a building, some of them might let you heal health. If you roll stars, they mean nothing on their own, but if you roll 3 of them, you get to take a card, which makes you a celebrity, apparently. It gives you bonus points and stuff like that every time you roll stars.
It's all about prestige, this game.
That's it, yeah. What other things is there? You can hit monsters.
Yeah.
There's special rules about that.
Yeah. And you can trigger military units.
Yeah, you can get military units to attack people on the board, usually just yourself if you only roll one of those symbols. If you roll multiple of them, then everybody can end up getting hurt. So when you destroy these buildings, they turn into military units. Basically, you flip the building tile over, and then it becomes a military unit. So the more buildings you destroy in a borough, the more military turns up.
Yeah.
But like destroying the buildings, there is a benefit to that because you can get like...
Well, it gets you your victory points.
You get victory points, you can get healing off of them, and you can get energy. You can get energy cubes. That's another thing you can roll on the dice as well. And the energy cubes you can use to buy cards, which are basically power-ups for your monster.
Yeah.
Some of them are quite amusing. Some of the things like the substation, where you basically just destroy a substation, which gives you loads of damage, but then also gives you loads of energy cubes back. And you get other things. What some of the things, like, you know, you get something like a tin opener, which lets you destroy tanks quite easily and stuff like that. It's quite amusing, some of it. But yeah, so what happens is that you basically roll your dice and you take your actions depending on what you've rolled. It's got that Yahtzee mechanic, which is you can roll the dice up to 3 times. You can re-roll as many dice as you like, but you can only do it 3 times. And after your third roll, you have to keep what you've rolled and use those. But what actually happens is at the end of your turn, if Manhattan's empty, if there's no monsters in Manhattan, then you have to move into Manhattan. And moving into Manhattan gives you a point straight away. But it also makes you the target of all the other monsters, because if you roll an attack on a die, it hits the monster in Manhattan if you're outside of Manhattan. But if you're in Manhattan and you roll attacks on a die, it hits every monster outside of Manhattan. And there's a bit of a push your luck thing there, because at the end of every turn you move further into Manhattan and you get more points for it and stuff like that, but you're also being attacked by everybody anytime they roll the dice and get a hit, so you get absolutely pummeled while you're in Manhattan.
And you can't heal while you're in Manhattan.
Yeah, and you can't heal using dice, you can heal using other methods, but it's just the dice, you can't do anything with those, so it is really push your luck when you're in Manhattan. You're racking up the points, but you're also getting the shit kicked out of you by everybody else.
And I guess it'll depend on the players as well, whether what they're focusing on.
That's it.
If they might roll attacks, and that's maybe not what they're wanting. They're trying to get more energy, so they can upgrade themselves. But
that's it.
It's kind of just.
You're right. And for such a light game, it does have a sort of load of different ways that you can win it. I mean, it is just a case of getting up, grabbing loads of victory points.
Yeah.
But there's different ways you can do that.
Yeah.
So, like I say, with that celebrity card, if you roll stars on their own, they mean nothing. But once you've got the celebrity card, if you roll stars after that, you get points for every star you roll. You could technically win the game without even going anywhere near Manhattan using these kind of
sit there,
tactics.
keep on trying to roll the stars, and
that's it. Or you can just keep destroying buildings and just going for points that way. There's a few different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And the game's quick. What, half an hour maybe?
Oh yeah,
half an hour to an hour to play a game.
Maybe
of it.
Not even half an hour if you're really
just
rattling through it, and you could do a few rounds of an afternoon quite comfortably. They've got a bit of replay value to it as well. Really.
Totally. I mean, you can just crack it out if you've not got a lot of time. Just batter that game out on the table. There you go, half an hour.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I think that's what we found ourselves sort of doing, chucking it in between slightly longer games where we weren't sure what we're doing. We'll just play a game of this. So. It's worth it,
it's totally worth it. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. What yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd be interested to play the Tokyo version. It's probably much the same.
I think so. I would imagine that the rules are slightly different. I don't see the point in them just reskinning the game. So, I mean, I don't actually know if the rules are different, but I would imagine they would be. Because just reskinning it as New York is just a bit weird.
It does seem a bit odd. So we've just got to get those regional audiences.
Well, that's it.
We in the UK are more familiar with Manhattan than we are with Yokohama Harbour.
I'm waiting for the King of Leeds version.
Hanging off Bridgewater Place.
The King of Dundee.
This is the tallest building in Yorkshire. Yes. So, would you care to give this one a rating, Chris? Do you feel it warrants it?
It definitely warrants a rating, and I would probably give it 4 flying cruiser ships out of 5. It's a good quick game, I think, and definitely keeping it. So,
I'll match your 4 with a further 4 crushed hospitals.
Oh, excellent! You do like a crushed hospital.
They are always of use.
I've been walking about with you out in the street before, and you've said, "See that hospital? I would love to see that crushed." Yeah, because it's the kind of guy you are.
Well, I mean, I'm quite a large chap already, and I'm trying to move towards getting bigger.
And your ultimate goal is to crush a hospital.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only way I've worked out so far of doing it is to draw a picture of myself on the side of a pumpkin and just keep on letting that grow and basically have a competition pumpkin. And it's taken me on a different tangent.
Would that work? I mean, if you draw a picture on the side of a balloon and inflate it, then it gets bigger. But you do it on the side of a pumpkin when it's small and let it grow. Would that work?
It becomes slightly distorted. I saw it in a children's book once, and I'm not entirely convinced of the logic. But right. I will be entering the county fair this summer. So
I'm not going to argue.
Make of that what you will.
Yeah, children's books are where I get all my science from. Because it's the level of science that I can understand.
With the big pictures and the big words.
Right, well, on that note, I think that's King of New York quickly wrapped up.
Pretty comprehensively covered.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Yes.
Grab it if you just want something fun and stupid. And
get it checked out, play a few rounds of an afternoon.
Aye.
And amuse yourself and your friends.
I would say this is a good game to replace Monopoly in that family gaming section.
Pretty much any game could do that.
Yeah, I know, but you want to try and find one of those games that people would actually play that is quite sort of quick, because, that default Monopoly attitude is disgusting.
Yeah. We could probably do an entire episode on the
Games
awfulness of Monopoly. Yeah. This is an unfinished game, basically.
Okay, well, let's move on then. We'll talk about another board game, a bit of a more complicated game.
Yes.
I got as a surprise gift. It was actually on the Board Game Geek Secret Santa thing, where you're just given the name of a person on Board Game Geek and you have to buy them a game. So I took part in that. I sent my games off to my target, but I got Star Wars Imperial Assault.
We reckon you probably got the better end of the
I think I got the
there.
better deal there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at the wish list of the guy that I had to send stuff to, and I was a bit like, I don't know what half these games are, So I just sort of took a good guess and sent them off, but I think I did well, actually. I did send them Mysterium and an expansion for something which I can't remember. So
Board Game Geek as well, .com.
Yeah, BoardGameGeek.com. Yeah,
highly recommended website for board game ratings and stuff. If you can't be bothered to listen to us,
yeah.
You'd much rather stare at a screen.
Just look out for the nerd rage. There's a lot of nerd rage can go on there.
I haven't been on the forums there particularly. I occasionally use it for finding out about a bit more about a board game than you would find on whatever Wikipedia or Amazon.
Euan, on the whole, they're a great bunch of lads.
Alright, as long as they're a great bunch of lads.
Great bunch of lads.
Yeah. Good guys.
Yeah. But some things are going,
and gals.
Fucking hell, lads. What's this?
Well, I think that's par for the course with any website forum, really.
Forum,
yeah.
Right, so Imperial Assault, that's what we were talking about. Right, so this is a game which uses a system which came from a game that was made by the same company. So it's made by Fantasy Flight. And it was designed by Cory Konieczka.
Sorry?
Cory Konieczka.
Cory Konieczka?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it's. I think he's American, but he's
Cory.
Cory Konieczka.
Cory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Justin Kimplainen and someone called Jonathan Ying.
Nice one, lads.
Aye, great bunch of lads. Them. I don't know much about them, but I know that Cory. I'm pretty sure he designed Descent.
Right. Okay.
Which is the same system that this game uses.
Yeah.
So Descent is a game that was released.
Fantasy dungeon crawler. When did that come out?
That's probably close to 10 years now. I would say maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah. Which we played a fair bit of at the time.
We did,
so we're quite familiar with it.
But I mean, Descent kind of suffered when the expansion started to come out for it and stuff like that. And I mean, it was a really good game. The base game on its own, just playing through a dungeon and stuff, and then you go through and you pick up better items and you fight guys, and that was. I remember that being really fun the first time I played. I thought this is brilliant. But then as the expansions came out and as the campaign mode, and I got involved in a campaign, you got involved in a separate campaign when you lived down in Leeds.
Yeah. I think we both encountered the same problems with it.
Yeah, we both got the same problems with it. It just became bloated and unbalanced.
The scaling
silly.
was just not, didn't really work.
So you played through a whole bunch of missions, and we were meeting every Sunday to do this, and it just dragged on, and I was the bad guy, I was the bad player.
Yeah,
it
didn't seem to be a lot of fun to be the dungeon master at that point.
Yeah, and it was basically you were just turning up so that people could slaughter everything that you put on the board, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean I was massively overpowered. It was basically as long as I hit, I was doing a minimum 10 damage, and that was without everything else that I was rolling about 50 dice.
Aye,
and I could fire from other players. I was a magic user. I could fire from other players' characters basically, so I could just hide behind a corner and just kill everything in a room.
And that's when the game got silly.
Yeah.
At that point, the game has just become stupid.
It was.
It didn't actually matter how much of a tactical genius the evil overlord was, because the players always got to act first. So you basically stuck all your monsters on the board, and by the time it was your turn, you had you went from 12 monsters down to 1, sort of thing. So it just became silly.
Yeah. But problems.
Anyway, I did kind of enjoy Descent, and there is a second edition out, which admittedly neither of us have played. And I think they have sort of solved some of the problems in it.
Yeah.
But I've never really felt the need to go back to Descent.
Yeah.
So I'll probably give the second edition a miss. But
if someone ever brings it up and plays it, we'll give it a go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two main things really that carry over from Descent into Imperial Assault, this Star Wars game. You've got essentially the dungeon crawling aspect of it. Figures on a modular board. There's different sort of missions you can do.
Yeah.
And the dice.
The dice
is the main thing.
The dice are almost identical.
Yeah, they've used. I mean, the big thing in Descent was always the surges. So there's a little lightning bolt symbol.
Yeah.
On some of the dice that usually allow you to use special abilities and things like that.
Yeah. Well, let's start from the beginning then with Imperial Assault. So, like you say, it is a sort of a weird thing because it's a dungeon crawling Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Which isn't something that you would imagine would work, but it does.
It is.
And you set up the board, like you've got lots of little map tiles that you just sort of put together depending on what mission you're playing. And each player plays as a hero, and then you've got your evil Imperial guy who controls the bad guys. And basically there's a little story running through this. So this game basically comes with a campaign mode built into it, which Descent didn't. It just had, like, the base game just had all the single standalone missions that you played, whereas this Star Wars game comes with a campaign thing. And one of the cool things about this is that you start off playing the same mission every time. So, like, if you start a campaign in this Star Wars game, you always play Aftermath. That's the first mission in it. But depending on the outcome of that mission, whether the players win or the Empire wins, that changes which mission you play next.
Yeah.
And it also depends on which characters are playing the game as well, which heroes are in the game, because they have their own side quests and all that sort of thing. So it's pretty cool that way, because there's like 30 missions or something in that book, and you might play completely different ones in a different campaign. So it's pretty good. And there's an actual story running through it, sort of thing, so it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just like, here's some random battles that you're just going to fight. It's like there's an actual story here. But how you play the game is basically each hero has their own little abilities and, you know, items and equipment and stuff that they start with. And you basically like go through the Empire player sets up his map. He puts on whatever he's told to put onto the board. So like that could be some units and some little tokens that signify storage crates and terminals and that kind of thing.
Like objective markers and things.
Yeah. And then the heroes, like the heroes always go first, but it's different again in this game, because like the hero player goes and then the Empire player gets to activate one group of his units, and then another hero can go and then the Empire gets to activate another group of his units. Yeah. So there's like back and forth there.
Well, you play a round essentially. So each player will have an activation token for their character.
That's right. Aye.
And everybody obviously has to have a go in that round. Yeah,
everybody goes once in a round.
And the Dungeon Master, I don't know what you call him, the Imperial Commander, gets to activate all his troops. So, I mean, we did have a couple of rounds where, because there was 4 of us playing, you might have already activated all your units, so we would actually then get to have a couple of goes in a row without you intervening in between.
That's right.
But it's a good way of doing it, I think. The kind of
Aye. So, because I mean, I don't know. We said before we started this podcast we didn't want to start comparing it to Descent constantly, but in Descent it was a case of all the heroes got to have their go, and then the bad guy got to have his go.
Yeah,
and that was one of the horrible balancing issues in it, because, like I say, by the time it was the bad guy's turn, you had nobody left on the board to actually play as. So it was kind of silly. Yeah. So it's a bit more tactical. It's a bit more fair and balanced than Star Wars Imperial Assault.
Yeah.
But basically, like, I mean, you take your actions, and there's a bunch of different actions you take. You can move, you can attack, you can, interact with things, you can rest, and you can do whatever special actions you're allowed to do depending on your equipment and your skills and that kind of thing. And, like, you can take 2 actions a turn, so when it's your go, you get to take 2 of those 5 actions I just described.
Yeah.
And if you move, you just move up to your speed. If you attack, you roll certain dice depending on what weapon you're using, and that's where the dice are quite interesting. This is one of my favourite things about the Descent system was the dice, and because the dice are not just 6-sided dice with 1 to 6 on them, they've got all sorts of things, and they're all colour coded, and they're all different sort of thing. So like the red dice is definitely a damage dealing dice.
And it's definitely meant for like
hand to hand combat and stuff. And it's like, it's just got like more damage symbols on those dice than any of the other dice do. Yeah. And you have things like is it the yellow dice or like sort of ranged dice, and like the green dice are sort of somewhere in between.
The green and blue ones seem to be for ranged weapons.
Ranged, right.
The yellow one would be kind of like an addition, but it seemed to be used in conjunction with the close combat one. But I think it allows for a bit of flexibility because they're not always. The combinations of them will be more suited to different types of combat, but they won't be exclusive to those. You can kind of chop and change.
They mix them up a wee bit. But the different symbols in the dice, so like you've got a damage symbol and you've got a surge symbol, which is a little lightning bolt thing, and then you've got a number as well on some of them
for range,
and that's for the numbers are for range. So if you're shooting at something that's 4 spaces away, that's Euan's phone going off.
I apologise.
So if you're shooting at someone that's 4 spaces away, you have to roll at least 4 on those numbers, and then the number of damage symbols you roll tells you how much damage you do. The number of surges you roll tells you what sort of abilities you get to use. Or like you can spend your surges on your abilities is what I should really say. So you might have things like you can add extra damage with your surges, or you can add extra range, or you can pierce armour and that kind of thing. And that's like the dice system in this system of game is pretty cool.
They've really kind of streamlined it as well, because they've not put you in a position where you haven't used loads of dice. But they do quite a lot with the few that you have.
Especially like Descent did get bloated with dice towards the end, to the point where they actually had to add extra dice into some of the expansions and campaigns and stuff like that. They had to actually give you more dice.
Yeah, do remember that.
It just got a bit silly. But yeah, I mean, it's just quite cool being the Star Wars setting sort of thing, and like, I'm actually enjoying being, because I'm the bad guy in this again. Right? I always am with these things. It's your game, Chris. You be the bad guy, right? But I mean, it's quite cool though, because you're controlling like stormtroopers and Imperial officers, and there's even an AT-ST in this game, and there's some weird little monster animal things, like Nexus and that kind of thing, and you've got like the Royal Guard and probe droids and all that sort of thing, and I actually feel there's much more like I'm getting more out of this sort of thing than I was out of Descent sort of thing, because
I think the role of the Imperial officer is a lot more nuanced. The way that you use the units, it just feels like there's more going on with what you're doing, and you have more of an input. And what we found was you were pushing us to the brink in every single, like, we played 3 campaigns. We played the 2 campaign missions and then an introductory one before that, which you beat us at.
I did.
And the 2 campaign missions, I mean, we scraped through by the skin of our teeth. It looked for the majority of it like we
got down to the last round in both things.
Both
campaign things, because each campaign mission has its own objectives. It's not just a case of kill everybody. It's like you might have to go. So you've played 2 things, and the first one, the Aftermath mission, was what was the actual goal in that mission? I can't actually remember now.
The Aftermath one, there was 4 terminals you had to destroy that were transmitting a beacon.
That's right.
So you had to take them out, and you had 6 rounds to do it.
And the second, you played a side quest as your second mission for it was for one of the characters,
for the Wookiee.
So
who we just kept calling Chewbacca by default.
And that was kind of similar. It was terminals again, wasn't it? But it was because you had to.
We had to rescue another Wookiee, basically.
That's right,
and there was 3 terminals that you needed to activate to unlock the door. That he was for the prison cell he was being held in, and then obviously go and activate the Wookiee. The imprisoned Wookiee. And there were also, on that level, there was pulse cannons about the place that were basically, if you ended your turn in line of sight of them, you were going to get hit by them.
And there was no defence against it. It was just a case of you
whatever
just got
damage
shot.
that you rolled, you would take.
But there's one of the more sort of cool things in it as well is that certain events can be triggered in the game, depending on what happens. So like you can be playing a mission, and like for example in that side mission, as soon as you actually opened all the terminals, or got rid of all the terminals to open the prison door, one of the E-Web engineers just turned up, straight away all of a sudden, and just opened fire on you guys. And that's like, so certain things that you do can trigger certain things, and I can really plan ahead for that. I can maybe try and force you into doing a certain thing just because it benefits me if you do it. If you see what I mean. It's quite cool that way. I feel as the Imperial player, I've got so much more choice than I did in Descent.
One thing that we did find actually was like, we kept obviously trying to discuss what we were doing with you in the room, and you were just like countering everything we were doing. So that, like, there was one moment when you went out and Dave was like, okay, let's actually try and plan the next few turns while you're not here so that we have some idea of what we're doing. But you do find yourself really having to go for the objectives because the way that your role is set up in the game, you can kind of keep on spawning guys. So if you get bogged down fighting, you're going to get stuck and you're probably going to lose.
Aye.
You have to.
And that's what I tried to do to you guys in the second mission, because I knew you only had 6 rounds and the terminals were quite far apart. And I just tried to bog you down with just constantly having to fight and just try and block in your way and stuff like that. And
like obviously the quicker that we took out units, the better. But again, you just didn't want to be fighting things constantly. A lot of it was like luck of the road.
And it did get to a point with you guys where you just kind of went, right, let's just stop shooting things. Let's just run. Let's just go and hit these things. And
I think this is a different thing as well, is that you have to accept that you're going to take a lot more. You're going to take a lot of damage.
You're going to take a beat.
There's a thing with the player characters where you have your health, and once that gets down to 0, you then flip your character card.
Yeah, and you become wounded.
So that becomes that's something. So you just kind of have to accept that's going to happen to at least one or two of you in the mission. Which, again, if we go back to comparing to Descent, was completely different, where you were just trying to avoid taking any damage at all, because you usually had about 4 hit points or something like that.
Aye, in Descent, it was kind of different, because even if you died in Descent, you just respawned.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And all that happened was that the evil player got some extra threat tokens and for killing somebody, and that just became a slog, because then it was a case of like, it was almost like a tower defense thing for the bad guy. It was just a case of like, oh, they just keep running at me. Let's just see how many of them I can take out, but they're just going to keep coming.
Yeah, no, I think definitely the best thing about it is, like, thematically it works quite well, because you do feel that it's, you're running about the place, being shot at, and just kind of this is the way of it. And it's very, Star Wars, just constant laser blast firing over it, but somehow not killing anybody.
That's right.
I've always taken it as a thing in these games, and I would say to some extent in first-person shooters, the way that health works, if you're trying to sort of reconcile that with real life, I always think of it as like just the chance that you're going to get shot, and every time you get hit, I'm doing air quotes here, by something in that game, is just the reducing the chances of you living until eventually it gets down to 0, and that's you getting like just plugged in the head, basically.
I'm glad you try to compare this Star Wars game to real life.
That's what's going on in my mind. As I say, I apply that to all like first person shooters particularly as well. It's like, it's not about you. People don't go around with 100 health, but they maybe go around with a certain like probability that they're going to get shot.
Aye.
Which may be reduced down to 0 depending on the number of bullets that go towards them.
This is really depressing, man.
Sorry.
See, when I go outside now, I'm just going to think, what's the probability of me being shot right now?
Well, you just need to check your heads-up display.
All right,
aye. Yeah, and if it's still at 100, you've got a ways to go.
I'm really confused now.
Anyway.
Aye, where were we?
So, yeah, we're just talking about the combat. I was just sort of making a few points about the combat in general and how it is very fluid. Because the way you go from one thing to another, it's not. You can't always coordinate in the way you want, and you have to be constantly adapting to what's being thrown at you. And it goes for you as well.
Totally.
So there's a bit of back and forth there, and your roles are almost very similar, really.
Yeah.
How you play the game.
Like I say, I'm enjoying being the bad guy in this game much more than I was in Descent, and it does feel like there's choice, and it feels like my actual units are useful rather than just cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Like, even the stormtroopers, they have their own little, their own little flavour to them, sort of thing. Like, even just rolling surges with stormtroopers is good. Like, that really helps them. You can do defense. You can add more damage and stuff like that. And you've got things like the droids and stuff. They can even heal themselves if they roll surges, and that's something that really gave you guys a headache at one point when that probe droid just kept healing itself. And
oh god, there was that one probe droid that was a real
nightmare,
real problem.
For you. Yeah, but yeah. It's a really good game, and it actually comes with another mode to it as well. And something I've not actually read the rules for it yet, but it comes with a 2-player skirmish mode. And I think right? And just to be a bit cynical here, this is just the way Fantasy Flight trying to get more money out of you, because you can buy little expansion models for this game.
Yeah.
And you can buy things like, you can buy Han Solo and Chewbacca and stuff. It comes with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in a separate pack. Just the base game does. But like, you can buy extra little models and stuff, and you can basically set up a one-on-one battle, basically. Or just, well, it's a skirmish.
It's quite interesting. I'd be interested to try that. I mean, if they were being really cynical, they would have just made that a separate game. So there is something to the idea.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Aye,
that there's just that whole other aspect to it that we didn't even really consider in going into playing it, because you're playing the sort of campaign.
Like when you buy these wee models, they each come with their own little skirmish battle on a sheet sort of thing.
Right.
But I think they've got one or two.
Yeah.
And I think there's even campaign like story things that you can add in and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's got that element to it as well. Like I say, I haven't read the rules, and I will do at some point. So I think it could be quite fun. But I've got to be wary about how much money I'm spending on this, because there are other games, Well,
yes, you do have an awful lot of games,
and I want more.
I shudder to think of the overall cost. Right,
well, Euan, it's your turn to give a rating for Imperial Assault. Alright,
well, I think actually everything I've said about it, I think if I was there a rating out of 10, I would give it 9. Chewbacca style. I can't even do it. Something in my throat's gone.
John's quite good at that.
Yeah, he was very good at it. Yeah, he was you were constantly asking him to give a low moan.
Anytime the flavour text said anything about a Wookiee growling, and I got John to give us his best.
We'll get a recording of that and just.
I think we should.
Have a Johnny John
Wookiee button. A Johnny John button.
A Johnny John Wookiee button.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you on your rating there. That's some good Wookieeing. Okay, well, that's going to wrap up the board game section, I think, because we have been playing more games, but let's not drag this out for 2 hours. We'll move on to some video games after a short break, I think. I'm going to let you go and return that phone call, because you've been eyeing up your phone.
I may actually have to.
Right. So, we'll be back in a bit with some video games. Okay, we're back. Ready for some video game chat. First off, we're going to continue in the Star Wars vein very briefly.
Well, we are in the era of the Force Awakens, aren't we?
That's it. We've both seen the film.
We have. There's no spoilers here.
No spoilers here. But I mean, I was crying when Chewbacca died. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, when Baldroid kills Dandruff.
Baldroid kills Dandruff. I was in a band called Baldroid Kills Dandruff.
Baldroid Kills Dandruff. Aye. I will say at this point, I want to see more of Poe Dameron. I may be slightly gay for him.
Are you slightly gay?
Only
for
a little
Poe
bit.
Dameron?
Not quite as gay as I am for Timothy Oliphant, but that's a different. Entirely.
I think you could probably start a separate podcast about men that you're gay for, you.
I think. Do you know what?
There's an idea for you.
I may actually do that. It's a rich vein there.
I'm not entirely sure what your target audience is there, though. Is it heterosexual men?
I can't wait to find out.
Well, that took us off track a bit there.
Yeah.
Well, let's we want to talk about Star Wars Battlefront.
Yes.
Or Star Wars Battlefield. Is it pretty much
Star Wars Battlefield?
It is Star Wars Battlefield. It's nothing like the old Battlefront games.
No. And they were very good.
And those were very, very good games. And I'd still play them now.
Yeah.
But this is really it's a first person multiplayer shooter, basically.
With a third person view.
With a third person, you can switch to third person. I think I've been playing it third person actually.
When I played it on your game, it was on third person. I didn't realise first person was an option.
I think it took me a while to figure out how to change the view, but
it started off in first person.
I think it started off possibly.
Right.
I'm not even sure. You know what?
It
doesn't matter. It don't matter. Right. So it's a sort of multiplayer shooter thing, which is set in the Star Wars universe, and it looks very pretty. Like, I have to say, they've done decent.
I'd say
the graphics in it are good.
Yeah.
But like I say, it really is just a Battlefield game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's variations on things like capture the flag or just kill everybody, and there's nothing much to say about it. It's not like it does have a single player mode, but I don't think anybody's touched that.
Is it? I mean, that's the thing. Is the single player mode worth?
I don't think so. I mean, I played it on the beta briefly, and it was just another tower defense style thing. It was just onslaught, like wave after wave of Imperial troopers that you.
Because the original Battlefront game, a single player against the computer, and that would be quite satifying.
Yeah,
just working through.
It would be quite difficult as well.
Yeah,
aye.
But yeah, I don't really see any merit in if it's just like just a multiplayer game with bots, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it is good. It's got the Star Wars feel to it. Like if you play as the Imperials one round, you play as the Rebels next round, and blah blah blah. And it's got like some pretty cool laser guns in it and stuff. But it's really just variations on like this is a sniper rifle, and this is a just short range pistol and that kind of thing.
Interesting. Pew pew.
So it just makes fun noises.
Yeah.
And they've got a leveling system in it. You start off, you've got to level up to unlock certain weapons and stuff like that, and you've got to earn credits by playing games basically to buy these weapons and buy little card things that give you like grenades and that kind of thing.
I've always been quite slightly curious about that system in these kind of games, because it was something that was a big thing in like Call of Duty and Battlefield and stuff like that. Where do you just become better than other players that haven't done that?
Well, that's the thing. Like if you go in at level 1. It's just like you start off with. I mean, it's not like the gun that you've got's bad. It's decent. You just learn how to use it, But I mean, you've not got any choice, and other people do have certain power ups that will give them an edge. Mm-hmm. So when you start off and you've not got any grenades or anything like that, then already you're on the back foot.
The grenades did seem to be a big big part of the.
But you do batter through the levels reasonably quickly, I suppose. I mean, I think I'm about level 7 or 8 now. I've not really played it that much. I've probably clocked up maybe 3 or 4 hours of actual playtime on it, if that. But I mean, it's just the kind of game that I would not sit and play that for hours on end. Like I'll dip into it for half an hour, and then I'm done. I'm done with it for that day, sort of thing.
It did. I mean, the bit I played just like a couple of rounds, it was quite fun, and I could see it. Yeah. It took me back to I was playing like stuff like Counter-Strike or whatever back in the day. It was kind of like I would probably sit of an evening and hammer through that for a few hours until you get bored. Depending on how.
For me, that threshold is obviously much shorter.
Yeah. I could have seen myself maybe playing that, and it is quite fast paced as well. So maybe.
Some of the missions are quite cool, and you do get like you get some. There's little power ups lying about in the battlefield, and you get some pretty cool ones. Like you can actually get into an ATST, nice. Or you can become Luke Skywalker for a while, or that kind of thing. But you also just pick up things that are just like thermal grenades and that sort of thing. I mean, but other than that, I don't know. I don't know really what to say about the game. Like I say, it's a bit it's a bit lightweight. I don't know if it's worth the whatever it was that it cost. It was like 30-40 quid or something like that. I don't know if it's worth that.
Yeah,
like, it's. I think because I never really played any of the Battlefield games or Counter-Strike or anything like that. They're not really my kind of thing. No. But I think I would prefer to play Battlefront because of the Star Wars theme, and it's something I'm familiar with. I'm not interested in gun nerds running about shooting each other with assault rifles because that's just annoying.
Counter-terrorism.
and all that sort of
not an area to get involved in.
Screw that shit. Like, just cannot be bothered with that shit.
Yeah.
So that whole just the Star Wars thing kind of disconnects you from reality, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So
enjoy it.
I prefer it that way. Aye. Mm-hmm. But they've got some interesting game modes. They've got, like I say, there's some things where it's like, you have to capture more probe droids than anybody else or the other team or whatever.
Yeah.
But other than that,
it's
a Star Wars shooting game.
I suppose on the sort of the retail price of it and everything, and its maybe value compared to other games, it probably would have been worth us checking this, but presumably you can probably download it for less.
I don't think so.
Copy.
I think the. Well, I think when these games come out, the actual download price and the physical copy price are roughly the same. So it might have dropped a bit now. Now the Christmas period's over and stuff like that.
With it being the type of game that it is, you'd have thought just a downloaded version rather than having a...
Aye.
Would it be a lot more useful?
I got given it for Christmas. That's why I got a physical copy, and that's how I don't know.
Listen, I'm not holding that against you, Chris.
Yeah, you are. All right. I'm just.
I'm not trying to give you any snash about it or anything.
You gave me snash, man. Right. Well, I mean, it's a decent game. It's not great. It looks nice. And like I say, it's just the kind of thing I'll dip into for half an hour to an hour at the most, and then I'm done with it for that day. And aye. If you like Star Wars and you like shooting things, then maybe you should pick it up. It's out on...
Damning with faint praise.
I mean, I don't want to call it a bad game. It's not a bad game.
No, it's not. By any means, it's fun enough to play and everything, but it's just not what... And I didn't play a huge... I've not played as much of it as you, but... I remember playing a couple of campaigns on Battlefront, and it was a lot of fun. And just,
it's not a Battlefront game.
Yeah,
it's not a Battlefront game. Yeah. You should make that clear. But it is what it is. All right, so just take it for what it is, and it's not a bad game. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a fantastic game either, but like I say, anyway, it's out on Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Came out at the end of last year. So like I say, if you like shooting things in a Star Wars universe, especially other dicks on the internets
who call you noobs,
who call you noobs, if you don't mind walking out into an open area and being headshotted over and over again and never learning your lesson, that might just be me. Then I pick this game. I think
we all have these moments.
Right, let's move on. And I believe you've been playing a remastered version in an old game.
Yes, recently Grim Fandango remastered.
Recently Grim Fandango
was remastered and released on PlayStation 4, presumably on other platforms as well.
Yes, it's available. The original was out on Windows. The remastered version is Windows OS X, Linux, PS4, PS Vita, Android and iOS. So there you go.
Oh well. And it's essentially, it's a genre of game you don't really see anymore, and probably with good reason. There are issues with this type of game, but I'm enjoying the setting and everything. Basically, you are it's one of your sort of adventure style games. So it's quite narratively
it's
driven.
Like a sort of variation on an old point and click adventure.
And I think I came to those games kind of quite late, so I've never really played the sort of what was the Treasure Island or Monkey Island or whatever.
Oh yeah, Monkey Island.
Monkey Island was the one that was kind of quite well known. I think I've played the ones I've sort of played would be like Day of the Tentacle. A lot of them are LucasArts.
LucasArts had a lot of them, and I remember playing them quite a lot when I was younger.
There's a lot of nostalgia for those type of games. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people.
They had like Indiana Jones ones. The Dig was one that I had, which was a really weird sci-fi one.
Beneath a Steel Sky as well, which is interesting you mentioned.
There was one where you played as a motorbike, like a guy in a motorbike gang. What the hell was it called?
Oh,
I'm going to have to look that one up, but yeah.
But it was a good way. I suppose at the time it was a good way of getting you into lots of different settings without having to really put in the kind of mechanics. It would have made a long sort of development period and really had to sort of stretch what you were doing to make a game. And so a lot of the quality of these games was kind of rooted in the writing and the setting and the kind of the narrative of it, and particularly with Grim Fandango, there's a lot of humour in it, and I love the look of it. You play this character Manny, who is you introduce him, you just see this guy's
Manny.
He's called Manny, yeah. He's not Manny from. Well, he could be Manny from the Stone Roses, just like putting on
that was what I thought of when you said that.
Putting on a Spanish accent, like, just to muck about, you know. So yeah, you're dead essentially. You're introduced as a kind of like Grim Reaper like figure, but it turns out you're sort of part of this whole afterlife bureaucracy thing, and it's quite an interesting idea. I've played through sort of introduction of it and gotten a little bit more into it, got a bit more of the story, and you're working for the Department of Death, and essentially you're reaping the souls and then bringing them to this office where you then send them off on their journey into the afterlife. So they have to they basically it's the whole thing of like crossing to the other side, but there's various ways that this can happen. So if somebody in their lifetime wasn't, a very good person or whatever, they won't have sort of accrued any. It's like karma sort of thing.
Right.
So people who are really good, they get to go on this express train that will take them to the other side in 4 hours, whereas most people have to kind of walk, and it will take them like 4 years.
Okay.
And you're introduced to the character kind of going through his job, doing this, picking up clients and things like that, and trying to maybe upsell them on slightly better things, because he's working on commission and things.
Okay.
It took me a while to work out exactly why your character is stuck in this thing, but essentially I think the idea is that some people were so crap in their lifetime that they're actually working off a debt to the afterlife, and he isn't yet allowed to cross over. He isn't even allowed to like walk, basically, at this point. He's got to pay off his debt working for this company before he's allowed to go off into the proper afterlife.
Okay.
So there's a lot to kind of process in terms of the storyline.
It sounds really good, actually. It's quite a well developed sort of setting they've got.
Oh, there. Totally. Like, and it's weird. There's all this kind of like I think they've used a lot of the sort of aesthetic mix of kind of like noir fiction, sort of 40s and 50s, like Art Deco look, and also like Spanish. There's all this like Day of the Dead stuff.
Okay.
That kind of thing. So there's a weird mix of that, which is quite interesting. Always that sort of informs the character designs, all these skeletons and everything. The gameplay itself can be quite frustrating. You did watch me.
I did
take almost half a minute just to walk across a garage, to no end whatsoever, to basically investigate,
including a part where you walked off the screen and then came back in. To the same screen, and then you came in a completely different place in which you had to walk straight back across again.
Yeah, some issues there, but I think
those are classic issues with those games.
Exactly, and I think like there's the reason there's sort of nostalgia for those things, and it's probably difficult to kind of sell it to a younger audience. But these kind of games, they are a part of sort of gaming history to some extent. I can kind of see why people want to sort of bring them back and kind of eulogise them in some way. But yeah, I think it's the story and the sort of character interactions that sort of make it. And there's a lot. It's a lot of puzzle solving, like these things. It's generally picking up items and finding what bizarre use you have to put them to. Yes. And a lot of that is just trial and error.
Which it usually is in these points.
Yeah, it's always trial. It's basically like get all the items and then try them out on everything until you find the thing you need to do.
The amount of things that I saw you try and interact with a loaf of bread in your hand was just amazing.
Well, I found that from the stall you could actually keep on picking up loaves. Most things you just get it or whatever.
Yeah, it's just one thing.
Yeah, there's just this pile of bread that you just can keep on picking up bread from. But that was kind of done to allow you to try out something, and there was another thing. Basically, there's like a pneumatic mail system in this office that you have to try and disrupt. So at first I was picking up these loaves of bread and shoving them into the mail system. And then I realised that wasn't really getting me anywhere, but clearly that's what you needed. You needed to do something with this. You needed to fuck with the mail system. So
the game was kind of teaching you that this is how you can interact with things.
Yeah, you can. It kind of points you.
But this is the wrong thing.
But it's the thing. And I suppose there's something to be said for it, that it doesn't spoon feed you, and you have to kind of use some even sort of skewed logic to find what you need to do. Essentially I had to find these. There was two chemicals that when you put them together, sort of expanded and hardened.
Right.
So I found there's a balloon seller that sells empty balloons. He sells balloon animals, but you ask him for a dead worm, and he basically just gives you a couple of like
long balloons,
just unblown up balloons, which you can then fill one each with these substances, then throw them separately down the tube to eventually disrupt the system. So that's how we
classic.
We walk through for you there, because I tell you what, it took me ages to get that going. I was wandering around trying all sorts of stuff, so it can be quite frustrating.
I think one of the things with these games is that a lot of the things you're supposed to do are really not immediately obvious, and it involves a lot of thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Or just picking everything up and clicking on everything. Yeah. Which is how I played those games. Just like
there's a good sort of trend in them. There was one I was actually wanting to mention in conjunction with this, because I have played it quite recently. There's the cartoon series Rick and Morty, came in Adult Swim, sort of second season last year, and they, in conjunction with their first season, actually released a sort of like an online, like a flash game, but it was one of these type of games that they were planning to do episodic. I played like through the first episode, and it was a similar thing where you just like a lot of the uses of the items, you'd kind of like, in retrospect, I see what you did there, but it's so abstract and so weird. Yeah. There was something with like feeding an alien, and I found some bug, but it wouldn't eat the alien. The alien wouldn't eat the bug because it wasn't cooked. But there was no way of cooking it until I found this lamp that you could turn on and off. I was like, well, why can you turn that on? And it turned out you could throw the bug into the lamp, turn it on, and that would cook it, so that you could then feed it to this alien.
Yeah, and that's a bit weird.
That's the kind of strange logic you're faced with. But that's another one I would recommend, and it's entirely free if you search for Rick and Morty's Rust licensed adventure. I don't know if the other episodes are out of that yet. In fact, I haven't really.
Is it possible that that's just a piss take though?
Oh, it is. Oh, it's absolutely. But the effort that's gone into it for something that was just like a promotional thing is actually quite impressive.
All right, cool.
But yeah, I would highly recommend it. Did you download Grim Fandango for free with your PlayStation?
Yes, it was on
Plus
PlayStation
account?
Plus. I think it could be this month actually, so you might still be able to get it. I can't remember if it was this month or last month that it came, but yeah, I definitely got it for free on PlayStation Plus.
Okay.
Well,
I would recommend it for just once you get over your frustrations with it, actually playing it, it's a good game, and there's a lot. It's a fun story, and
you have seemed quite absorbed in it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Once you kind of get going with it, I think actually now that I've gotten past the sort of introductory bit and I'm more in tune with the logic of the game, I'm starting to get there a bit better. And a lot of the puzzles that were coming after were things that I'd been trying in the first part that weren't really coming off. But then I was kind of primed to do them. So you generally you might get stuck on one area, but you might move a bit quicker through the next part.
Aye. Right, cool. So you want to rate some Fandangos for us?
I'm just going to give it 7 out of 10 Pan de los Muertes. Okay. Shoved down a pneumatic tube.
Excellent, right. So that's Grim Fandango, available on many platforms. So if you've got some sort of gaming thing, you can probably get it.
I expect so, even if it's like the old version on a cracked copy or something from...
well, we're not allowed to talk about those things, though. And by the way, the game that I was thinking of where you were the head of a motorcycle gang or some member of a motorcycle gang, it's called Full Throttle.
Full Throttle.
And apparently there's a remastered version of that coming out this year. Yeah. So there you go.
Nice.
Right, let's move on to something completely different.
Have you got more to tell us?
I have got. So this is the one game that I've picked out of the many Steam games that I've been playing over the Christmas period. I did get a couple of Steam vouchers from one from my girlfriend, one from her mum. Someone tells me that her mum didn't walk into a game and buy me a Steam voucher. I think my girlfriend might have a hand in that.
She took advice on that one.
Well, anyway, thanks very much for that. So I got some Steam vouchers and I decided to pick up a few games that have been sitting on my wish list for a while. And one of them is one that actually Pawel, I saw him playing and I thought, what's that? Because it came up on the friends list, he was playing this game and I thought, I've never heard of that, I'll check that out. And it's called Thea the Awakening. Thea. Now, this is it's a survival game, really. And you know what I'm like with survival games. I do like a survival game. And this game, it's a survival game a bit of a twist, because it's almost like... it reminds me of Civilization, like the Sid Meier's game. The Sid Meier game. Games, even.
We've had all sorts of trouble with his name over the course of this podcast. Let's not stop that now.
Right. So Sid Meier. It's kind of weird, because you, basically the story is that there's been some darkness for centuries. So, like, there hasn't been any real light or anything in the world. And then all of a sudden the first rays of light start coming through, and then you've got this little tribe of people, basically this little group of people that are just trying to survive into the new era sort of thing. And the idea is that you're supposed to play as some sort of deity. It doesn't really come up that much in the actual game itself, to be honest, the actual deity side of things. You're really just like controlling it like you would Civilization sort of thing. You're just looking down at this town that you've got.
Alright.
So you start off with a town, and you start off with a little bunch of settlers, and I think you start off maybe 10 settlers, 9 or 10 settlers sort of thing, and they've all got their own little roles in this town. So generally they're split down into like just warriors, gatherers, craftsmen, and I think that's really all you get to begin the game. As you go through the game, you can get sort of more different people. I've even got a witch now at this point. You get hunters, that kind of thing. And really, like, you start off on just this sort of top-down map sort of thing, and you've just got your little town, and you have to assign your gatherers to go and get some wood and get some vegetables and that kind of thing to keep your town alive. The whole thing's turn-based, so, you know, you press next turn and you'll gather all the stuff that you've gone out. And you can craft, like, new weapons and all that, and it's got quite a cool crafting system. So there's all sorts of different materials that you can send your guys out into the world to gather. And even, like, some of it's just basic, like, you can go and get some sort of string-like material. You can get some, you know, like, different types of wood, stone and gems and all that kind of thing. And then you can put them all together to craft all these different things. So the crafting recipes have all got their own, like, basic things. So there'll be maybe 2 or 3 separate parts to it. So the top part might say you need some sort of stone or some sort of wood, and then the next part might be you need some sort of gem or some sort of wood or some sort of, like, string material or whatever to make this weapon or whatever. But depending on what you put into it, changes the stats on the weapon and stuff. It might, the main material you use changes what the weapon actually looks like, that kind of thing. Yeah. And some of it's pretty cool. I mean, like, the first time that I combined, I think it was Dragonbone and Mithril, and created a ridiculous two-handed sword, which
sounds like you would.
Leached all sorts of life out of people and stuff, was just incredible. But the game's, like, it's heavily story-based, and it's actually based in Slavic mythology, which is quite interesting. So all your characters have all got these sort of Slavic names and stuff like that. And it's kind of different. That I quite like that, because this sort of, like, you know, Western European medieval fantasy thing that's been done to death is kind of like...
I've been saying it for years.
Yeah. It gets a bit, you know, samey after a while, and this has got this sort of medieval fantasy idea to it, but because it's kind of Slavic,
there's a new twist on it.
The things that you're encountering are slightly different, and they're all sort of based on actual Slavic mythic monsters and that kind of thing. You still get your basic skeletons and that kind of thing, and goblins and orcs and stuff, but there are other things in it as well. And like I say, there's a story running through it, and you can send your guys out, and you have to give them all, like, if you send a party out to go explore or go gathering stuff, you have to make sure they've got enough wood and food to survive, or they start dying, and that's horrible. Like, and I mean, you really have, like, a small group of people. You never really, like, I've been playing, I think I'm something like 300 and odd turns into the game, and I've only got something like 18 people
in your
and the whole town, and the whole tribe basically. So some of them are out in the world just wandering about and encountering various things. And so you get this, like, the story running through it. So you're basically just trying to find some way of bringing more light into the world and making your people happy and that sort of thing, and making sure they survive. And I'm assuming that there is an end point to this game. I'm not entirely sure. Survival games, sometimes they do have an end point, sometimes they don't. I think this one is going to be one of the type of games.
Seems like the way they'd be going at taking this light
and
thing.
I've been doing quite well. I have to say, like, 'cause I'm 300 odd turns into it, and I've got so much food and so much wood in my settlement, and so much different types of food, and that's quite important, because the more different types of food you have, you get more bonuses for the people that are carrying that food around. They might get extra health, or they might get extra, you know, defense or something like that. So, like, it makes them happier. But, like, there's a sort of combat system in this, and it's not just a combat system. They use it for everything. So every test that you have to do, and it's a weird card game. So basically, like, if I send a group of 6 people out into the world, and they come across a bunch of, I don't know, skeletons or something, then you'll start off a combat with them, and you'll get your 6 actual people with their different stats and stuff, and there's so many stats in this game that it takes such a long time to get your head round it. But you realise that quite a lot of them are kind of irrelevant to what you're doing. It can really depend. And you've got your different stats, and they'll have maybe an attack and a defence, and, like, their health. And that's all on the cards for a combat thing. But your hand gets split into 2 separate decks. So if you've got 6, you'll have 3 and 3. Alright, and one's your actual offensive cards, and one's your tactics deck. And the stats that the people in your tactics deck have can determine what they can do in the fight. sort of thing. So it's kind of weird. Like, it takes a wee while to get your head around it. But
Sounds
some of these things can be like, you can actually just add defence onto a card that you've just played, sort of thing. So you can put one of your characters out in your offensive thing. Your next turn, you can add the shield bonus that this tactics card would get to that person instead of putting them into the fight themselves.
Right.
You can put them into the fight themselves, but they don't get to attack in the first round if you do that. Because combat's split into 2 rounds, basically, before you have to gather all your cards back up and then play them again, sort of thing. And that's quite interesting. Like, it's actually quite an interesting little combat system. It starts to get a wee bit tedious after a while, I have to admit, especially when you're going up against some of the shitter enemies, and it's just a case like, I could easily win this fight.
You've got to go through the motions.
Well, you don't have to, but the thing is, there is an auto-resolve button, but I've found that, like, most of the time I click that, and if I'm fighting just crap monsters, then I'll win. But sometimes something stupid happens, and it's just like, this is a combat that I should have easily won. And all of a sudden my best fighter's got 12 wounds and he's dying. You know, and it's just like...
Yeah, that's not...
And so you get to the point where you go, well, I'm not going to click this auto-resolve button anymore, because if I just go to begin combat, I can easily win this. Like, you know, it's a bit silly, that. It's my only real complaint about the game, to be honest.
Yeah, that does seem a bit odd.
But, I mean, it's a really interesting world, and an interesting sort of world they've created there, and I think it's kind of random as well. Like, so it's a random created world that you get. I've started off in this really horrible snowy region, which was not a great place to start, but I didn't realise that until about 100 turns into the game, sort of thing. So, because it takes longer to move through snow than it does to move across normal ground. But it's quite interesting. It's a difficult one to actually describe to you, sort of thing. I mean, it looks like Civilization, but with only one town, basically.
So it's quite sort of flat and kind of, it's not, you know, all... the only thing, because obviously you've been talking about it before, is Armello, there's all this kind of terrain and everything like that.
Well, yeah, it does. It does kind of look like Armello as well. But I mean, I would say that the actual graphics themselves look much more like Civilization 5.
Right,
it's that sort of style. But you know,
I haven't
it's
played
not
a Civilization
really
game beyond Civ 2.
Oh, right. Well, Civ 2 was a good one though.
Well, that's the only you need, really.
Aye.
Did play a bit of Alpha Centauri, but that can do one basically.
Thea the Awakening. It's, like I say, it's a hard game to describe. It's a survival game with a lot of crafting in it, and it feels like a Civilization game. But there's a lot of nice story and stuff in it, and interesting random encounters and stuff like that. I mean, they have put quite a bit of thought into some of these things.
That sounds like a very rich experience.
Yeah, and it reminds me slightly of a game called King of Dragon Pass, which is an old DOS game, I think, like MS-DOS game, which was kind of similar in the way that it was just a town that you were running, and you had to, like, you get random things that happen to you, and you had to make certain decisions, and those decisions could affect what happened in the future, sort of thing. So, it's kind of similar to King of Dragon Pass, but I mean, it's a good game, and it's really badly makes you suffer from one more turn syndrome. Really badly.
Always the way.
Like, I sat there, I think I must have played it for about 7 hours straight last weekend. Just sat down on Sunday night or something, and then I suddenly realised it was 1 a.m. and that I was working the next day. You know, it was just, it's one of those games, so you've got to be careful with it.
Set an alarm, folks.
Aye, set an alarm and then go, I'll have another turn.
That's your one more turn alarm.
Yeah. But I would recommend it if you like a sort of game with a bit of depth to it that will remove you from the real world for a while.
And you said this was on Steam?
I picked this up on Steam, and I think it is only available on Steam.
Right.
I'm just going to look at that just now. Yep.
Okay.
It was released for PC Steam Early Access in September 2015, according to the website. And there's an Xbox One release planned this year.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Which is, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, just for it to pop up on particularly Xbox.
Particularly the Xbox. Well, they must have some sort of deal going on there. So, but yeah, look for this on Steam. I mean, it's not something that, like I say, it was only when I saw Pawel playing it that I realised this game existed.
Right.
But it's got really good reviews. Really positive reviews and stuff, so it's obviously a well received game, and I'm kind of wary of playing it again, Phil, because it does. You do just sit there for hours, and I've got other games to play. But Fear the Awakening, have a look at it. It's
great
a good
bunch of lads.
Great bunch of lads.
So is that all you want to
I think that's all. I think that's because let's have a look here. We're now over an hour into this episode, right. So I think we should probably wrap it up there.
We like to keep it compact for you people.
I've got more games to talk about, but let's leave that till next episode.
Oh yeah, we don't want to run the risk of getting to next month and being at the same position we were at the end of December.
Well, exactly. That would be tragic.
That would be.
We'd have to take another month off.
It's fine. I'm away on holiday anyway. So.
Oh, that's true. Aye. I'll get Pawel to fill in for you.
Yes,
I think that's the plan.
Yeah, so you're going to have a guest host.
Yes, guest
host
Pawel,
Sod.
And he's going to be even harder to understand than Euan is.
Well, hopefully, but actually, no. I would say he will go off on more tangents than I will.
Oh, probably.
You've heard him before.
I'm going to have my work cut out for
wrangling Pawel.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I should get somebody else. I don't know.
Oh no, I think.
What do you think?
The world's crying out for Pawel.
You think the world's
for a Pawel Sod?
I think your fans are. I say your fans. They're really Pawel's fans.
They are really.
He's got a little fan.
They've taken him into their hearts.
Aye. I'm not sure what I feel about that.
I'm just glad we could introduce someone like Pawel to the world, and the world would accept him for what he is.
That's true. Yeah, you do have to accept Pawel for what he is. I mean, that's not a phrase that you want to hear said about you. Yeah, you know that, Euan. You've just got to accept him for what he is.
You just got to take him as you find him, really.
Right, well, thanks for listening, people.
Yeah, cheers. Good to be back. End. Good to be back. Looking forward to doing more episodes. I'm not going to be doing one for another 4 odd weeks now. But
we thought we'd better squeeze one in with you in it, though.
This has been fun. Yeah.
Right, cool. So if you enjoyed this episode, or if you didn't, or if you just have some questions about the podcast or any sort of gaming question or whatever, then you can email us at firstplayertoken@gmail.com.
You checked that recently?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I check it every month at least.
Oh well, yeah. That's probably that'll probably do.
I do check it.
Yeah.
In fact, it's set up to come on my phone anyway. So if you email me, I'll get it straight away, and that means I've no excuse for ignoring you. Yeah, you can also find us on Facebook. It's the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast.
Leave a comment.
Yeah, we are on SoundCloud. You can find us there. Mm-hmm. We do have the Twitter thing set up. It is at First Player Token, and that's one ST player token, not the word first.
Once
player token.
Once player token.
Yeah. So you can find us there. And I think that's all your social media things.
That's it. Have you even used the Twitter? I certainly haven't tweeted anything on it.
I have, but only a couple of times.
A couple of dick pics.
Yeah, just a couple of quick dick pics.
Fair enough.
You got to get the dick pics.
Get that out of the way. Get it out of your system, and then you can go.
I'm going to post a dick pic straight away after this. So, expect a dick pic on Twitter next time you look at it. It'll be there. Just look us up. You'll see a dick pic.
You don't even have to look us up. Just search for a dick pic on Twitter. Do something useful.
This is going to be the finest. In fact, I'm going to take this dick pic right now, Euan. There we go. Right, that's our dick pic taken.
Look out for that on the Twitter feed.
Right, here we go. Oh God, what have we done? You're actually going to have to go and look at Twitter now to see what we've done here.
I'm hoping, hoping it won't be lost on you.
Right. Well, on that note, thanks for listening.
Goodbye and good night.
Good night.